In the fall of 1980, when I was 14, a friend of my parents named Naomi Shah fell in love with me. She was 36, a mother of 2, and married to a wealthy man. Like so many things that happened to me that year, it didn't seem strange at the time. Griffin Hurt is in over his head. His role on the hit TV show The Nuclear Family in high school life at Boyd Prep on New York's Upper West Side, along with the increasingly compromising demands of his wrestling coach, had him teetering on the edge of collapse. Then comes Naomi Shah, 22 years Griffin's senior. Unwilling to lay his burdens on his shrink, whom he shares with his father, mother, and younger brother, Orrin, Griffin soon finds himself in the back of Naomi's Mercedes sedan, again and again, confessing all to the one person who might do him the most harm. Less a Bildungsroman than a story of miseducation, Playworld is a novel of epic proportions, bursting with laughter and heartache. Adam Ross immerses us in the life of Griffin and his loving, yet disintegrating, family while seeming to evoke the entirety of Manhattan and the ethos of an era, with Jimmy Carter on his way out and a B-list celebrity named Ronald Reagan on his way in. Surrounded by adults who embody the age's excesses, and who seem to care little about what their children are up to, Griffin is left to himself to find the line between youth and maturity, dependence and love, acting and truly grappling with life. Reviews. Starting off 2025 with a novel this terrific gives me hope for the whole year. Playworld presents us with a story dipped in molten nostalgia and flecked with love and sorrow. A Bildungsroman from which anger has been vented, and what's left behind is redolent with insight, tenderness and forgiveness. The narrator's voice is an extraordinary hybrid of a boy's plaintive innocence and a man's wry reflection. Somehow, Ross can recall high school with enough fidelity to recreate on the page that visceral feeling of utter bafflement at the behavior of adults. But nothing baffles Ross as a narrator. His powers of observation and sensation seem to invade every nook of these lives like the tentacles of some giant octopus with consciousness in every sucker. There's not a dull line, and yet his prose doesn't feel like a Christmas tree so freighted with baubles that the branches risk shearing off. Whatever past rough experiences Ross may be mining here, they've been compressed under the pressure of time and genius into a cluster of literary gems. Such is the stuff great novels are made on. Ron Charles, The Washington Post. Extraordinary. A beguiling ode to a lost era. Ross is so adept at world building that we are seduced by his vision of the Big Apple as wholly enchanting and mystical. I didn't want it to end. The story is so rich and filled with intriguing, if morally questionable, characters that it's immersive. Line for line the book is a revelation. Los Angeles Times, charming, affecting, Ross is a spry, funny, inventive writer. Another mark of the book's freshness is that, even though it contains all the ingredients for a mopey story of formative traumas, Playworld never sheds its winsome optimism. The Wall Street Journal, engrossing. Things come to a head one fateful summer as, amid personal and family tumult, the maturing Griffin begins to inhabit his most important role, himself. The New Yorker. Dazzling and endearing. Gorgeously textured and frequently very funny, Playworld revels in all the heady, scuzzy, confusing bits of coming of age. Vogue, the best books of 2025, a marvel of language and characterization. Playworld conjures, in beautiful sentences, a bygone New York, when money and culture linked arms, recalling Donna Tartt's The Goldfinch and David Gilbert's and Sons. Ross's sharp prose fleshes out even minor figures, and erotic tensions keep the narrative taut, disquieting, off balance. The Boston Globe. Ross artfully brings 1980s Manhattan to life, capturing its seductive pull and the darker currents underneath. Playworld delivers a gripping coming-of-age tale, whilst offering a chance to reflect on the era's lasting cultural mystique and the complexities of growing up in its shadow. Women.com. A modern masterpiece, sharp and breathtaking and wise. Griffin, the young man at the center of this vivid Bildungsroman, is someone you'd follow anywhere. Across the sweaty mats of the high school wrestling team into a steamed-up car for a wildly sexy and heartbreakingly human relationship with an older, married woman, and then into the glittering world of child acting. Playworld is a primer for human existence, the system through which a human is made. Remarkable. Lisa Taddeo, author of Ghost Lover and 3 Women. I'd have followed this character to the ends of the earth. This is an extraordinary story about what it means to face the baffling contradictions of self, of others, and of the world. Rebecca Mackay, author of The Great Believers. Playworld is a novel that is a time machine of a kind, if they were ever used to seek revelations. I was reintroduced to an American history I lived through, and so much of what I had never known I'd forgotten, so much of what I was never taught to fear, but perhaps should have been. This was not my story, but I saw mine in it. A boy lost in the house of adulthood, trying to learn how to be one of the people he sees around him. Haunting, mesmerizing, provoking, this novel is a triumph. Alexandra, author of How to Write an Autobiographical Novel. A wonderful, full-bodied, modern yet old-school novel that brings the New York City of the 1980s to vibrant life. Ross will make you laugh and break your heart. I haven't felt this immersed in a work of fiction in a long time. Harlan Coben, author of Think Twice. Playworld is an astonishing, immersive novel that deserves a place in the pantheon of great New York novels. I loved this book for its textures, its music, and its moral accounting of ordinary life and ordinary time. And the characters. What characters? This is a late-breaking classic and might very well be Ross's masterpiece. Brandon Taylor, author of The Late Americans. It's difficult to overpraise Playworld's tragicomic scope, dazzling ambition, categorical brilliance. Ross writes so close to the bone that I winced while reading. And while young Griffin is brutalized and betrayed by the adults putting him through his sentimental education, Playworld is never hopeless. It instead reinforces our faith in art, that it can make and save a life. I have not read a book this weighty and soulful since I put it down, and I doubt I will again. Stephanie Danler, author of Sweetbitter. Playworld just about tore my heart out. Holy sh**t. Elliot Ackerman, author of Dark at the Crossing. In this magnificent novel, Adam Ross pulls off a literary hat trick. Playworld is at once an elegy for a very particular time and place, an intimate portrait of one family that then sweeps the reader into a multitude of fascinating worlds, and a tour de force of a coming-of-age story with an unforgettable boy at its center. I loved it. Donnie Shapiro, author of Signal Fires. What do you say about a book this good? Griffin Hurt's life is so real it glows. Matthew Clam, author of Who is Rich? Playworld is the story not so much of a sentimental education as a plunge into the deep end of adulthood. Adam Ross has given us a masterful novel, one that deftly sets Griffin Hurt's coming of age amid the rise of Reagan and the get mine first ethos that would come to characterize so much of American life in the coming decades. This novel is, in short, the world in full, and flat-out brilliant on every page. Ben Fountain, author of Devil Makes Three. Few writers are blessed enough to write an untouchable book. Adam Ross is one of them. Set during a trickle-down 80s we are now ready to make sense of, Playworld will have you so convincingly wrapped up in young Griffin's world of romance and anxiety that you will pine for lost days. Patient, propulsive, spooled with Nabokovian detail, this novel broke open my heart's floodgates in the way that the best literature does. Siddiq Fafana, stories from the tenants downstairs. Griffin Hurt is a teenage narrator as fully realized and fumbling for meaning as William Styron's ever-searching Stingo, and is destined to become one of the 21st century's most beloved protagonists. You don't just fall in love with him, you're transformed into a kind of devoted surrogate parent. Playworld is a marvel. Hannah Pittard, author of Listen to Me. Playworld by Adam Ross submerges the reader into the thoughts and emotions of teenager Griffin Hurt as he navigates the alluring, contradictory, and dangerous territories of 1980s New York and the adults who shape his life. Ross masterfully conveys the inherent mystery of being young, of trying to make sense of and exert some agency within a world, your family, your friends, your community, your society, that everyone else seems to already understand, and the revelation that, no, everyone else is just as selfish, feckless and untrustworthy as you. Immersive, expansive and unflinching, Playworld will break your heart. Matt Nixon, a cappella books, dazzling and endearing. Gorgeously textured and frequently very funny, Playworld revels in all the heady, scuzzy, confusing bits of coming of age. Vogue. Ross's Mr. Peanut, 2010, second novel is an epic Bildungsroman covering a year or so in the life of its narrator-protagonist, an enthusiastic teen actor Griffin Hurt. Ross offers surprising narrative flights, stunning passages, and a nostalgia-soaked setting in So Real You're There, bygone New York City. Booklist.